Hello, I'm Dr. Rebecca Ford.
Hi, and I'm Dr. Matt Hannon. Welcome to Local Zero. Traditionally, big energy companies have dominated a very centralised energy system. But today, we'll be talking about one way that this monopoly is being challenged, and that's community energy.
Hundreds of communities have their own local energy systems, from community wind on the island of Barra to solar PV in Brixton. And these community energy systems can bring enormous social, economic and environmental benefits to local areas.
Community energy saw a boom in the 2010s, largely at the hands of the lucrative feed-in tariff, but is now at a crossroads due to big policy changes. So what does the future hold for community energy?
It's not just about ownership now and generation, it's about services, it's about looking at retrofitting, flexibility, community-owned car clubs powered by community solar. You know, the opportunities, there are just so many of them.
Emma Bridge is the Chief Executive of Community Energy England, and she'll be joining us alongside Professor Patrick Devine-Wright, an expert in community energy and public participation from the University of Exeter.
Improving green space, biodiversity, reducing fuel poverty. What community energy allows us to do is connect up ideas around emissions reduction activities, renewable energy projects, with all the other things that happen in local places.
So as always, we want to hear from you. Tell us what you think of the podcast and ask questions or suggest topics for future episodes.
Reviews and suggestions are always welcome. And you can also tweet us. We're at energyrev_UK. Use the hashtag #LocalZero. But first, as always, let's bring in our faithful wingman, Fraser Stewart. Hey, Fraser, how are you?
I am absolutely wonderful, guys. How is everybody else doing today?
Yeah, no, top. I'm sitting in the sunshine yet again. Seems to be, every time we record, the sun comes out. The other 6 days are, of course, torrential rain.
Excited for the episode today. Community energy is something that obviously all three of us have worked around quite a lot. We have a lot of experience with. And I think it's fair to say that we've always been not just interested, but actually probably quite excited by.
Certainly from my end, I'm very closely involved with it. Work with an organisation called South Sea, so I'm trustee and currently chair for them, but also day job doing a lot of research on this like Becky. So, it's going to be really interesting to hear from Patrick and Emma today about their thoughts, the kind of the coalface really, about how we get this going and why we should even bother.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fascinated in community energy as a topic. And I think more to the point, community energy in kind of driving that sense of community. I don't know about the two of you, but I feel like I've been very nomadic through my life. I think that's part and parcel of being an academic is you can tend to move around quite a lot. Through some of my travels, I spent quite a lot of time living in New Zealand. And for me, I was always really fascinated by the strong sense of place that a lot of the communities had there. And that went hand in hand, not just with community energy, although that started to become a very interesting and growing topic during my time in New Zealand, much in the same way, in the same sort of era as it did in the UK. But actually how it's kind of woven in with stronger community engagement and social links and ties to the community. So it's something that really, really interests me. I think in part because I've never really felt connected to that community. So aside from something that I'm really interested from a research perspective, just kind of building my life in Glasgow and starting to feel more and more embedded into a community, thinking about the ways that community energy can kind of support that social infrastructure that I think I've often felt is really missing in my own life.
Yeah, and I think engagement, we hear this word all the time with regards to net zero and the just transition. It almost gets overused, but we can't lose sight of its importance. Why is it important? Well, if you're going to achieve net zero and ensure that, that transition is just, i.e. no section of society is left behind, then you've got to canvass opinion from everybody. And then you've got to involve everybody. You can't leave 1, 2, 3, X number of sections of society behind. It won't work and it will cause problems. So it's the way to go. And community energy is often framed as a very important way of doing that. Now, Fraser, I know you're involved with the community energy organisation. Is that something that you're doing and trying to achieve in Glasgow?
Yeah, definitely. Engagement is absolutely at the heart of the stuff that we're doing. But I think community energy, what community energy means, it means a lot of different things to different people depending on who you ask. I think one of the important things at the heart of the Glasgow mission certainly is that just transition element. So it's about finding ways, not just where communities already have financial and social capacity to pool what can be often quite big, arduous, ambitious projects together, but how we can make sure that the benefits of those projects are also flowing into communities who could really stand to benefit from measures to reduce fuel poverty, who could stand to benefit from the quite substantial amounts of money that community energy projects can generate. So I think there's a justice question that underlies this, but certainly the potential of these projects is massive. I've got a little bit of trivia for you guys, which we
always love.
Hang on, that's normally my job, Fraser. Back off.
It is. Sorry, Matthew, you've been sleeping at the wheel this time and I've taken over.
Might be the last.
No, it's actually, in fact, this is a good test as to whether or not Becky's actually read my research. So,
No pressure.
I know, just to put you on the spot, Becky. I know you don't read numbers anyway, so it's fine. I've been doing work around, predominantly around the feed-in tariff, kind of looking at where the benefits of the feed-in tariff went to. And the research that I've been doing suggests that community energy projects have actually been really good at bringing a lot of that benefit to low-income areas. They target areas who stand to benefit a lot from savings and from community benefit funds. But the question for you guys is, under the feed-in tariff in Scotland, how much money do you think community energy has generated for community benefit in the last 10 years?
It's millions.
This shows that I clearly don't read your papers.
Millions and millions.
I'm not accepting that.
Well, I think this is where it gets really interesting, Matt, because for me, the big question is what counts in all of that, because particularly where you're starting to talk beyond just, say, income from a renewable energy scheme, and you started to talk about, retrofitting and addressing fuel poverty issues. Well, this is where we see kind of cascades of benefits, isn't it? Because it's not just about then bringing in financial income into the community, but you start to see benefits in terms of health and of impact. Impact
this is
kind
a
of
politician's answer to Fraser, because
Yes.
you haven't read his paper,
Totally.
have you?
I have no
Okay,
idea.
so that's awkward.
Well, actually, benefit is subjective.
Are you talking per annum, Fraser? Is it income per annum?
No, I'm in the last 10 years.
Oh,
To
that's
how
10
much
years.
has community how much has community energy been worth in financial benefit, as in payments from the feed-in tariff? How much do we think?
Great. It's going to be more than 10 million then. I thought you were talking per annum. Okay, I'm going to go higher.
Oh,
than that.
payments from the feed-in tariff. Okay. Yeah. But I do think that it's, and I really want you to tell us the answer, but I do want us to remember that the impacts are so much more than just the financial number.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No,
And that's
fair,
kind
yeah.
of why I was pushing back before. It wasn't trying to avoid the
Yeah.
question. It was just,
It is important.
I think if we focus on the numbers, we're going to miss a much bigger part of the picture. But come on then, tell us the number.
We need drum roll now. Go on.
The number is, Matt, you're not far off. The answer is approximately £42 million from community projects alone. So that's substantial money. And now where Becky's coming from there, I completely agree. It's a big part of sort of what drives me is that wider benefit as well. But bearing in mind that money has gone into community benefit funds, which then get used in sort of social projects around the place. So it's a lot of money.
So we're going to hear a bit more from you in a moment, Fraser, I think, about your work with Glasgow Community Energy.
Yes.
So, bit of a teaser, what we're going to cover off.
Absolutely, yeah. Shameless self-promotion, but we're launching our share offer in a couple of weeks' time. The community energy project we've got in Glasgow, we're putting solar on the roofs of 2 schools, one in the south side, one in Easterhouse in the East End. They're expected to generate, they're up and running now, they're already generating. We managed to sneak in under the line of the feed-in tariff, so we're getting a decent rate on that. They're expected to generate per school, and this is quite a small solar installation, per school, £5,000 a year for community benefit in the local area. So it's a good project, it's an interesting project, but the time that it's taken to get it off the ground, the barriers that we faced, political, social, economic, along the way, it's a massive, massive undertaking. So the conversation that I'll be having with Ellie, who's the Glasgow Community Energy Director, unpacks the kind of the practical, procedural elements of getting it off the ground. So hopefully it's something that people can take away. Yeah.
Look forward to it.
I mean, this is an absolutely critical part of the discussion, isn't it? And it's that these groups, while so important in terms of the sorts of benefits that they can drive in their areas, whether that's kind of neighbourhoods or cities, they rely on voluntary input. They rely on people doing this above and beyond their day jobs or, after they put the kids to bed or whatever it is. And it's really it's passion that drives people, but it's those skills that people are bringing to the table. And yeah, absolutely critical component of all of this, isn't it? That kind of entrepreneurial element, but in a voluntary way.
It does. But to be honest, I think the secret to scaling this up is about bringing organisations that sort of professionalise community energy without losing the sense of what community energy is. There is the question of how professional, how corporate do you go until you lose what is community action? And again, that's a difficult tightrope these communities have to walk.
All right, on that note, I think let's bring in our guests.
Hi, I'm Emma Bridge. I'm Chief Executive of Community Energy England.
Hi, I'm Patrick Devine-Wright. I'm a Professor of Geography at the University of Exeter, and I've also sat on the board of Exeter Community Energy since 2015.
At its most simple, community energy is essentially any type of energy project or service that has local leadership, is locally owned or accountable, and has wider local benefits. So generally they are more renewable energy type projects because most of the sector is motivated by tackling climate change, but also they can be done in partnership with local businesses and local authorities, and in fact some of the most effective projects are, and there's loads of different ways to get involved. So that's owning, generating, investing in, giving energy advice and so on. I would say that building a zero carbon energy system isn't just a technological issue, it's most definitely a social issue as well, and it requires a just transition. So I think the challenges and opportunities are so great that not only do we need whole energy systems, but we also need those to be part of whole place systems. So community energy organisations are already at the forefront of energy innovation, energy system innovation, they're initiating behaviour change, helping to accelerate that decentralisation and decarbonisation of the energy system, as well as upskilling communities right across the UK. Now, the key thing of community energy is that it does all of this by building the trust, consent and active participation that's needed to ensure a rapid and just energy transition. So building upon that, community energy is an incredibly effective way to harness people's passion, knowledge and the capital to contribute to the UK's energy system, but also contributing to those broader social, environmental and local economic benefits. And the other challenges that are happening right now around building community resilience, climate action, investment, linking to housing, food projects, transport. So it's really very much about bringing energy within that whole economic recovery and the green recovery.
So this is whole of lifestyle, isn't it? I mean, Patrick, are you seeing this reflected in your research, right? So we're hearing a lot of reasons why community energy could be important for lots of different people. Is this coming out of your research as well?
It definitely is. If you narrowly frame community energy around the installation of this piece of kit or that piece of kit, you're actually missing a trick. And I think that's been one of the challenges for policy over the last decade, is seeing community energy in that more holistic framework. We are facing an unprecedented environment and climate emergency, a crisis. There is simply no way that we can respond to this effectively without harnessing all of the different actors in society and everybody playing a meaningful role. And what community energy allows us to do is to connect up ideas around emissions reduction activities, renewable energy projects, with all the other things that happen in local places. Improving green space, biodiversity, reducing fuel poverty, lots of non-energy issues, which are still local challenges and ways of enhancing what places are like to live in for communities of people. And I think what community energy can do is to ensure that we harness the kind of grassroots energy of people who really ultimately care about local places and are not coming in for a short-term project that's got a bit of funding and then heading off somewhere else without that kind of enduring local commitment, which is what community groups can bring.
Excellent. So, looking at this, and you've mentioned some of the policy challenges that we face, I think some would argue that actually community energy had some sort of fairly important and adequate policy support, maybe going back to the feed-in tariff introduction in 2010. But it's certainly been no bed of roses, and there have been big policy changes along the way, including the scrapping of the feed-in tariff. But there's lots of other stuff here, investment tax breaks being removed, the cessation of the renewable heat incentive. There's lots of things that have happened recently, even in just the last sort of 24 months, that have really hurt the sector. So I just wanted to get your take on, the very best and the worst of policy in recent years and how it's supported or undermined community energy.
Probably one of the best that kickstarted it all was the community energy strategy. I mean, that didn't last very long. It was very much a coalition strategy. So I think it wasn't really taken ownership after kind of the end of the coalition. So unfortunately, that's where really